the 9th Annual Radio TV Film Pro Perspective Panel at UW Oshkosh. I'm your host, Garahbrie Wesley-James. Thank you for joining us live on 90.3 WRST FM Oshkosh and Titan TV channel 9757 and our new HD channel 711 that is available on campus. For this year's Pro Perspectives panel, we invited 3 outstanding radio, TV, film alumni who are working in the industry and are excited to share their knowledge about the professional world and, of course, offer advice to current students. Since they are very eager to get started, let's jump right in and introduce our 2017 panel to you all. Our first panelist is the media coordinator for the Fantasy Football Players Championship, FFPC, the largest season-long fantasy contest operator in the industry for the past year. He has also hosted and produced the High Stakes Lowdown podcast through rotoviz.com and is co-host of the Fantasy Football Show on The Score in Appleton. Please welcome Eric Balkman.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Our next guest is a creative director, senior writer, and producer for ABC Entertainment who has successfully marketed How to Get Away with Murder, Once Upon a Time, Revenge, and many other shows. She is a 2017 recipient of the UWO Distinguished Alumni Award. She is dedicated to helping students through scholarships, internships, and informal mentoring. Please give a warm welcome to Brenda Lee Lau. And last, but certainly not least, we have an American media maker and scholar, is a product of the MTV generation and has amassed numerous awards for short films and music videos. He is a 2008 recipient of the UWO Outstanding Young Alumni Award. He currently resides in Milwaukee, where he focuses on directing and editing feature-length films and developing documentaries. Everyone, please welcome Rubin Whitmore II. To provide a little more background for our audience, let's start by talking a bit about your jobs. Could each of you give us a brief overview of the responsibilities of your current position? Let's start with you, Eric.
Well, it kind of varies day by day, I guess. The majority of it is obviously hosting and producing podcasts that we have through the FFPC, through RotoViz. Interviewing, the sort of niche is getting these high-stakes players who don't want to talk about fantasy football because they don't want anybody sort of, copying them because they've been very successful, trying to get them to open up. So I do 2 of those a week, and then I coordinate a lot of the appearances that we make on SiriusXM, and anytime another podcast or another radio station needs a guest, we sort of coordinate with our players, and I do a lot of the marketing for the FFPC as well.
Nice. And what about you, Brenda?
I'm at ABC Entertainment Marketing, and there my specialty is launching our new dramas. This year it was The Good Doctor, and previously it was Designated Survivor. Before that, Quantico. Before that, How to Get Away with Murder, Scandal, blah, 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 every year. And I also did the Oscars, and basically what it entails, my job is to get eyes and get an audience for our new shows. And to do that, I make these short videos, promos, trailers. Sometimes it's original shoots, sometimes it's clip-based, depends on what the needs are. I work with all the major record labels to use music, which elevates the spots, and it's a really fun job. I work with the talent. We have graphic designers that help design the look of the promos, editors that work with me once I give them the script and the sound bites. It's basically like making little mini movies every single day.
Nice. Well, now I'd like to take you back to your time at UWO. When did you know that you wanted to be a radio, TV, film major? We'll start with you, Brenda.
Well, I wanted to be a radio, TV, film major the moment I came here. One of the reasons I came here. But I couldn't quite convince my parents that was like a real thing. And so I started off as a chemistry major. And then I think the second semester of my freshman year, I started taking some radio, TV classes, went back to chemistry, blah, back and forth, back and forth. My junior year, I just switched and became a radio, TV, film.
Sounds like me. What about you, Eric?
For me, it wasn't until I had never planned on it until I was getting close to a journalism major here, and I kind of realized that, wow, if I actually, and I hope my journalism professors aren't watching this, if I actually got to a portion of media that people consume actually instead of print, then I would be able to open myself up to a lot of different opportunities. So I added RTF, the RTF major. I think it was in my last semester working on my journalism major, and stayed here another year and a half.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, a lot of great memories.
Good story. Let's talk about everyone's involvement outside of the classroom. What student organizations were you involved in when you were a student here?
Well, for me, WRST was the biggest one that I was involved in. I did some stuff for Titan TV as well, but radio for me was a much more passionate subject. I'm not good looking enough for television, so radio. So WRST. It was probably the bulk of my time that I spent when I wasn't in the classroom and working on classroom projects. But I mean, Titan TV was great too. I had a blast here. Those are the two student orgs I was most involved in, RTF.
And what about you, Brenda?
Well, when I was here back in the 80s, I don't think they had weekly TV shows, but we definitely did TV productions as part of the curriculum. WRST, definitely I was involved there. I was also involved with the Pom Pom Squad. And the other thing, what WRST did for me, I actually got a job while I was still a student. And I worked professionally as a DJ in Beaver Dam at WBEV and WXRO. And about a year later, I really wanted to be a newscaster. I got a job at WOSH at WYTL, and I did the morning drive news cast.
That's awesome.
I say just take any opportunity, all the internships you can get.
Absolutely. And Eric, you are familiar with the Pro Perspectives panel, am I right?
Yeah. This is, I don't even know what year it was. I think it was 2010 or 2011. I actually co-hosted this as a student. So it's cool being back here. Feels about the same. Obviously, all the pressure is on you, so I'm just enjoying myself right now. But yeah, this is awesome. I definitely enjoyed hosting. I learned a lot then, and hopefully we learned a lot from Brenda today, not me.
Awesome. That's great to know. And Brenda and we have Rubin here.
Here's Rubin.
So we'd like to welcome Rubin to the stage. Hello, Rubin. All right. We're actually going to backtrack a little bit once we get Rubin mic'd up here. And our first question for you will just be a little bit of background in your current position now. No, you take your time.
Should I type it a different way? No, you sure? Yeah. All right.
Perfect. All right. Well, welcome to the Pro Perspectives panel.
Appreciate
We're glad
that.
to have you. We just were trying to get some introductions in there. We just wanted a little bit of background knowledge on the position that you currently have and the responsibilities associated with it.
All right. Well, I'm a film director and editor by trade, and I have a film production company in Milwaukee, and we've been around since I've been back, which is 2011, and we make pretty much feature films at this point.
Okay, perfect. And then another question that we just had really quickly is just some involvement outside of the classroom that you had.
On campus here?
Yeah, different orgs you were involved in, or?
On way back when I was here, I was with a fraternity called Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which is a national fraternity, been around since 1906. This chapter in particular is the Eta Pi chapter, and it's very influential into my time here at Oshkosh.
Perfect. And Brenda, how much of an impact did the skills you learned in student orgs have on your career?
Oh, it was huge, huge. I mean, I was able to build a reel, get the experience. You're hands-on from the moment you want to be, and that's so valuable. And especially with the way things change, constantly, you know, keeping up on the different editing systems, the different, you know, design tools, everything like that is just so important to stay relevant. Pretty much no matter which area I think you go into, if it be TV, film, probably even, you know, you have to design your website. You know, I mean, there's so many things that you have to take into consideration when you're marketing yourself for a job, you know, so it's really important.
Absolutely. Eric, were there any opportunities that you wish you had taken advantage of in the student orgs that you didn't when you were here?
I guess I really wish I would have gotten more involved with Titan TV. The thing is, like, you know, as students and people who create media, we all have our strengths, you know, and it's good to hone those strengths while you're here, but we'll have weaknesses too. And I think obviously with television, I was lacking in a lot of areas there. So I think as important as it is to become really proficient at what you do well, it's really important to make sure that you're proficient in the areas you're weak too, and make sure that by the time you graduate, you're strong everywhere. So I think Titan TV there was a few missed opportunities there for me.
Absolutely. Well, student organizations are a big part of involvement in the major, but let's touch on experiences in the classroom. Was there one professor or class that had a major impact on your time here at UWO? We can start with Brenda.
I can think of two in particular. One was definitely television production, and I remember writing and directing a fun little show. I think it was called Campus Life: The Inside Story, and we were directing in the studio, you know, live switching, and I had these cast of characters, and it was really fun. And then the other class was Dr. Bob Jacobs, which was film production, and 10 of us were selected to go to Hollywood for 3 weeks, sponsored by Ray Bradbury, and that was definitely a game changer, life changer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's awesome. And Carl, what was your favorite class project to work on as a student and why?
Me or Rubin?
Rubin. I said Carl. I'm sorry. I was
confidence.
thinking about someone else. I'm
confidence.
sorry.
I'm like, I'm not responding to Carl.
Don't respond to Carl.
I thought you were going to.
Don't
It's
do
just
that.
right out
Don't
there.
respond to Carl. Do not respond to Carl. That
All
was
right,
me.
what's the question for Rubin?
The question was for Rubin. What was your favorite class project to work on as a student and why?
You know, I have to mention that the school as a whole was always, the program as a whole was always encouraging of us to create and venture out on our creative limbs. And with that being said, there was a program that was created that I was responsible for called SOS Music. And at the time, music videos were pretty big. So it was a pretty forward-thinking thing to think that we were going to do on our own music video show. And it turned out pretty well, and it stuck around for a number of years. So that's, you know, definitely one of the highlights of that experience.
Nice. So the classroom experience is important, but so are internships. Did any of you have internships while at UWO? And if you did, do you have any tips for the current students? We can start with you.
Yeah, you could add this to my missed opportunities, because I definitely think it's one thing to. I think that when you're a student here, you need to get your work done for your classes. That's very important. Student organizations, very important. WRST, Titan TV, make sure you're getting up a lot there. I think for me, I was worried that getting an internship would be too much, like that's being, you know, too much being put on my plate. And so I never had one, and I wish I would have to have that real life experience while I was here. It would have opened doors for me. And I think we always push ourselves. We don't push ourselves to the point where we're actually capable of handling. I think, and that's something I learned. I have 2 young kids at home. I can't believe all the stuff I'm still able to get done chasing them around. But I think the thing is, when we're in school, we're worried about, I'm not going to get this project done. I'm not going to be able to get this. You know, project done for WRST, and how am I going to do this with an internship? If you put your mind to it, you're going to be able to get it done, and that's something that I battled with and lost ultimately, but hopefully you guys do not lose that battle and make sure you get multiple internships.
Absolutely. And Brenda?
I kind of started working, so that was kind of my, I guess it would be a paid internship, but I think along with internships is seeking mentors, which I think is really a very powerful tool to have, and you can have more than one, and they can guide you, and they can even steer you in the right direction, a sounding board, and help maybe even find you that perfect internship and recommend, give you recommendations and stuff. So that would be my advice.
What about you, Rubin?
I didn't have an internship but I did multitask beyond my abilities. So what ended up happening, I ended up going to Atlanta, Georgia during my senior or my last year at Oshkosh and working on a quote-unquote real project as a PA. And that was life-changing. It opened me up to the opportunities that the real world of filmmaking had and offered. And while I definitely believe you should have internships stretch your mind, imagine yourself doing things that you probably wouldn't even imagine the school has in mind for you. And that's kind of where I felt very comfortable with my decision. It wasn't technically an internship, but it was, like you said, a paid opportunity to go to another state to work on a quote-unquote real film production. Made so many professors mad at me, but in the same token, I have no regrets about it. On the mentioning of mentors and even networking, that kind of really comes into play. I mean, I've concluded that the two most important things with all of this typically is relationship and timing. So you're building this network, and you're building it right now, you're building it every time you interact with somebody, and if you imagine yourself on a global platform or on a national platform, you might want to start networking on a global platform or national platform. That's where the people you're going to work with are. So, I'm a fan of the internship, but I definitely want you to consider the many possibilities. Don't just look at it as an opportunity to get off campus. Look at it as an opportunity to get out of the state or maybe even out of the country.
Absolutely.
May I add something
Absolutely.
to what you said?
Yeah.
Is that definitely everything you said is so accurate, and working together here, learning to work together here is really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Supporting each other, because let me tell you, this business is not a solo business. You are working with different personalities. You got to convince people to do things. If you're working with talent, you're working with their managers and their reps and their PR people, and you have to become a master negotiator, and you have to deal with all types. And now is the perfect time to start. And the other thing about internships that I want to say, and you guys may, go on Warner Brothers websites, Disney's websites, all the major studios, all the major, I'm sure Netflix, I'm sure they all have it, and check out their internship opportunities, because they have them, they're paid, they're based around the country, around the world, and they're fabulous things that you can do during the summer. They know that you're students, and you can make some great connections. So I would recommend that.
Absolutely. And then more so speaking towards actually having an internship, what is the most important thing that you took away from that experience?
Can I just chime in?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I'll go back to the relationship side of it. The way it's kind of being packaged is there's all these formalities. I will say something that works in my logic very well. It's like identify who you know. You might know somebody through a second or third connection. We all have this LinkedIn attitude or Facebook. It's really useful. It's like that can be your network. It's like discover who you know. I'm a big fan of identifying unique names of places, of people who work in places that I want to be, and find out how I know them. And I have obviously some time in this industry, but even at a young age, that's how I got my first project. It was because I knew somebody in Milwaukee who knew a project in Atlanta. And I wasn't scared to make that conversation and that call, and eventually they're like, so you really want to drive all the way to Atlanta, work for 5 days for little to no money? Yes, I do. They're like, well, we could pay somebody at rate in Atlanta, but if you want to come here on your own bill and do all of this stuff, I'm like, yes, I do, because it was putting me in the real spaces that I wanted to be in. So for me, it made all the sense in the world. To somebody in the industry, what they hear is eagerness. They hear that hunger, that drive that makes you say, I remember those days. They might actually work 18 hours and not complain. And if that's the reality and if that's the opportunity you have, then you should maximize it. So that kind of goes back to what I'm encouraging you to do, is figure out who you know and don't be afraid to reach out to them, because if it's an ambiguous person, anonymous person that you're reaching out to for an internship that's formally out there, like the NBC example, you can figure out some safe, appropriate way to reach out to somebody and say the same thing, like, hey, I know you're from Wisconsin, I see you're working in a field that I'm interested in or on a show that I'm interested in. And it can, you can overthink it and convince yourself not to do it, but the reality is most people aren't gonna freak out if they get a very safe, simple example of, hey, I'm interested in being a part of this world. Because we all have those beginning points, I would, but we didn't have Facebook and LinkedIn.
No, we didn't.
But it's the same concept. Oh, I know somebody who works on that show, here's an email, and you reach out.
Yeah, and I mean, an easy thing to ask for is an informational. You're a student, I love what you do, and I would just like to talk to you about it. Do you have 10 minutes for either a phone call or a face-to-face? I just want to learn more about what you do and how you got to do what you do. And most people are willing to talk to you about that. So that is one thing that I really didn't know about, but I see people doing that, and I think it's really effective. The other thing, too, is one of the young women, recent grad, Liz Simonis, she contacted me when she moved to LA. I was in the middle of making an independent film. She volunteered to be on it, and now she's working beside me at ABC Entertainment Marketing in production. So it's like reaching out, offering what you can do. We all need help. I mean, you guys know social media far better than I ever, will. I always need help in that area, and people, when they're successful, don't have time. And instead of always asking what they can do for you, it's like, how can I help you out? It's a really great way to approach people.
Absolutely. So I'm assuming it's safe to say that you've used your contacts that you've made, over the years and in different internships and on different platforms. You use those contacts in your career currently? Is it safe to?
That's all it's about.
I'm not the most social individual by design. I mean, I'm comfortable in front of people and with the stuff that goes with it, but the relationships you build can start now. I can honestly say one of the strongest relationships I have, several of the strongest relationships I have, started here at Oshkosh, and they've taken me around the world to other parts of the country, not always just directly in the line of interest that I'm currently doing, but it can be, wow, oh, you're doing gaffing, or you're teaching at a major college, oh, I'd like to come and lecture, and things because you can talk to them more freely. So, I'm a firm believer the best time to get to know somebody is when you don't need them. So if I believe relationship and timing are the two big business moves, the best time to get to know that relationship is when you don't need them, because then you can just build a relationship that's based off of commonality, not off of the urgency or the anxiousness of, I'm looking for a job, can you help me? It's like if you can just discover that, oh, you're both vegetarians, or you both went to Cuba, or you both don't like the Packers and things like that, you know what I mean? You'll
like the Packers.
There are some people in Wisconsin who are not a fan of the Packers. But the point being is you can build that natural rapport, and you'll be surprised how far that goes later on. And they'll be like, oh, you're the guy who didn't like the Packers. Me neither. And then all of a sudden there's a commonality, and you haven't asked them for anything. You're just building a rapport, and then you can spring it on them. Like, hey, I'm going to be in LA. You mind if I take a meeting? And more than likely they don't have time. They'll be like, come down to the studio. And you're like, yep. I'll meet you there, and now you're right where you want to be.
Absolutely.
And something that Rubin said earlier, it's where the whole business is based on relationships and timing. It's totally true. And you can't really always control timing, but you can control the relationships. Like, you can control how many bridges you're building with, not only your peers here, but people that you work with in your field that you meet constantly. Always being, available to them, always reaching out to them. And once they know you, like Rubin was saying, now all of a sudden there's something there. I've been told no so many times when I've asked for stuff or tried to get a project on, get something, some sort of collaboration going. But, because of all those no's, the yes is so sweet when you get that. And you will get yeses. The more relationships that you build, the more bridges that you build, eventually one of them is going to take you to a place you want to go.
Absolutely. And kind of going off of the no and yes aspect of that comment, I know for me as a student, it's really heartbreaking when I get a no. Like, I still haven't gotten over that sting of receiving it. So how did you move past that? And
you just wait till you're dead inside. No, like, I don't know. I don't think I mean, I still am not over it. Like, it's tough. When you get somebody saying no to you, you can't take it personally. It's not a personal thing. It's more, I mean, maybe it is in some cases. I don't know. Maybe you're a real jerk. But the thing is, like, when you get that no, it's just you got to work around it and find, okay, that's maybe not blocked off. I'm not going to burn that bridge, but I want to make sure that I can circle around it to get to something else. And so I think at some point, a no it's not expected, but you kind of know what's coming. You know how to prepare for it to get to that next yes.
Perfect.
And you have nothing to lose when you ask.
That's true.
You only lose if you don't.
That's true.
Remember that. It's really true. Because for all the no's, there is going to be a yes.
And don't be extra sensitive. I mean, most people are not saying no to you because they don't like you. And even if they don't like you, there's a place and a space that will like you. So just search it out. Don't overthink the quote-unquote rejection. It's just part of the game. And if you only expect to get yeses and wins, rude awakening.
All right. So starting with Brenda, what was your first industry job, and was it what you expected?
Well, it was while I was in school. Do you want the Hollywood one?
Yeah, let's do Hollywood.
Okay. My first job in Hollywood was at King World. And how I got that, I worked at TMJ in Milwaukee, and we carried Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. And the station manager made a phone call for me to King World, who's the syndication company, and I got an interview there, and I got an entry-level position, and then I was part of the marketing team there, and that year, we launched Oprah Winfrey. So it was really, making those connections work. I mean, I didn't know the station manager. He didn't know who I was, but I did ask for a meeting before I left for Hollywood, and he made a phone call, and that's how it happened.
Absolutely. That's awesome. What about you?
Well, starting my own company kind of was the first industry job. So off of that experience in Atlanta, foolishly brave. I'm a firm believer what you don't know isn't always a bad thing. So I didn't know I wasn't supposed to start my own company and claim I'm a director and do things that directors do and run a company. So I started a company fresh out of college, and this is when music videos was actually quite lucrative, and made a tremendous first step into the industry doing a lot of music videos. So I'm a firm believer in not conforming, follow your dreams. I'm not going to say your parents are going to approve of that. My parents were equally as like, really? When are you going to get a quote-unquote job? And I was trying to avoid it. And to this day, I honestly tell people I've never had a job. A job is a thing you don't like going to. I've had a career, and it started in Oshkosh my last semester. And I don't have any apologies, but I know I was walking on a tightrope. And I'm not one of those guys who says, everybody can do it. Not everybody can do it, but if you believe in yourself and you want to put forth the extra work, there's that possibility. So, and it's a possibility. It's not a promise. So.
Absolutely. What about you?
I'm still doing it technically. No, I was working just as a part-time lackey for the FFPC, and I think just media in general. I think it's still a wild, wild west. I mean, you want to do something, you can do it. But the fantasy industry really, over the last decade, especially the last 5 years, has really taken off. And I said that I think a great way to get more clients, more customers, more people getting excited about this, and most importantly, giving us money, was to start up this podcast. And the slant would be that everybody, you can create your own website or have your own podcast and call yourself an expert. Nobody's going to disagree with you. You can call yourself whatever you want. Well, we're having people who are putting up $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 of their own money, bringing them on. Nobody was doing that. I mean, nobody's still really doing that consistently. So I pitched that idea, and that was one of my yeses. And we're still doing it. We're over 300 episodes in, and it's really taken off. So once I found that this is something that is fulfilling a niche in the industry, and I enjoy doing it, I'm not going to stop doing it. So that was my first and still current, or one of my current jobs.
Perfect. When it comes to resumes, what do employers focus on, and what are they really looking for? You can start, Eric, if you'd like.
Well, I think that you have to somehow be different. You know, you have, and I think that, again, this kind of goes back to what the three of us are saying, is getting that wide breadth of experience on your resume that you can put on there, and hey, you know, I did this, and I did this, and I did this. You also have to kind of make it, you have to frame it to, well, how does this benefit the person that's going to be interviewing you? You know, like how are you making yourself an asset? I mean, you can list all your accomplishments, but you have to make sure that what you're showing in your resume is going to benefit the person who's eventually going to be hiring you. So I think that, you know, gaining that experience and then making it applicable to the person that you want to work for is huge.
Perfect.
Agree. Research who you're talking to. And I mean, your resume's on a computer. Change it. You know, put front and center what it is. You know, have, you know, everyone sends a list of whatever. Make it stand out. We're in a creative industry. You know, surprise me. Make me want to look at you. Make me want to meet you. You know, what can you do? You know, what can you say about yourself? Or, you know, I'm a writer. Write me a piece of creative copy at the top. That's like, wow, you know, that inspires me. You seem like a cool person that I want to work with. The other thing, like I said, is be current on the tools.
Absolutely.
On resumes, on document everything you do. Like, create this, they call it a CV, start working on it now. Everything. Remember all your accomplishments. I'm guilty of that. It took me like 10 years to like, oh, I think I need to make this credit list. And then it dawned on me, I couldn't remember half the stuff I did. So I'm encouraging you just on a base level, while you have very little on your resume, just keep up with it, keep it on Google Drive, just keep adding every time you work on something. Which leads me to me, more than a resume, and not necessarily knowing what the makeup of the crowd is or audience is, on your demo reel. By all means, you know, reflect the level in which you are claiming you want to be at. You know, I'm a cynic. You know, what do filmmakers do? They make films. What do editors do? They edit. What do screenwriters do? They write. So if you're claiming you want to be a screenwriter, your resume might want to indicate this. And you're like, well, I haven't done anything yet. I'm like, yep, catch-22. But if you're saying you are something, at some point somebody's going to want to see that item. So, you know, maybe the way I'm trying to frame this is, your resume may be to get into the door, but realize that they're going to look at what they need. So you do need to snipe them and figure out what they are in need of, but you do need to make your current resume reflect that need so that it doesn't look like you're a jack of all trades and a master of none, which is what most people look like on a piece of paper. But if you're the person who says, you know, I aspire to be an editor and I've assisted on 4 projects, doesn't matter if they're college level, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if they're college level projects, but the fact that you understand what your department is and you're an editor, you might only be responsible for getting the editor coffee and you're now assisting them. But the reality is, at least you've identified you want to be an editor, and that goal approach is something that I kind of want to emphasize too. It's like, have a clue. Now, and I'm not saying that with complete cynicism. I'm saying it with, if you have an idea of where you want to go, it's a whole lot easier to get there. So often people walk around aimlessly because they haven't figured out the goal. And it's not to say that it's just in your face and obvious, but it is to say it's an obligation and somewhat have a clue as to what you want to do.
Absolutely. What's the most valuable piece of advice you can give to someone trying to land their first job in the media industry? We'll start with you, Eric.
First job, I mean, cast as big of a net as you can. You know, hit up job fairs, those relationships that you built at your internships with your fellow peers here. You know, make sure that you're contacting them if you know that, hey, they might be able to get me a job in the industry that I want. And don't like shoot for the moon, like, I want to be producing this TV show. Obviously, that's not realistic. You're not going to start off. Be willing to settle for that first job, but once you settle for it, don't like settle permanently. Like constantly, you got to constantly always be looking for that next opportunity. There's always another one out there. So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with once you're established and working in the industry, I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping your eyes and ears open and making sure that there's not something better for you out there.
Absolutely. What about you, Brenda?
Yeah, definitely. The whole mentorship thing. Another question you can ask to get your foot in that door, besides an informational meeting, is there a shadowing opportunity? Can I, if it's a news show or a movie or a music video or whatever it is there a possibility for me to shadow either you or someone on your set so I can really, gain some experience and really learn? I think most people are open to that.
Absolutely. Did you have anything to add, Rubin?
No, I mean, I'm echoing what's being said. It's, you have to go out there and identify your opportunities. They typically don't just come to you. So, and realize that as intense as it sounds, there are a lot of us out there. So, whatever graduating class you're in, you have to figure out where do you fit into the big scheme of things and be willing to be competitive with it.
Perfect. Well, in a few moments, we're going to start taking questions from our audience. If you have a question for the panel or a specific panelist, please head over to the microphone in the back. You can raise hands, too. Okay, that works. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Brooke, and I have a question for Rubin. So as a director for feature films, what are some of the biggest challenges that you run into, and how do you overcome them?
I mean, you could say all the obvious ones. You never have a big enough budget. You never have enough time. But just your willingness to own your voice while at the same time working with your team so that it's a balance of what you see in your head and your ability to bring together the team that's going to help you execute it. Filmmaking is so much a team sport, and not to sound archaic, I'll stop saying filmmaking. Media making, because whether you shoot on film or not, you're telling a story. And I fancy myself a storyteller, so even though I'm going to keep using this archaic title of filmmaker, if you look at my vision statements as a director, it's like I am a storyteller. You can tell that story with your iPhone, you can tell it with a high-end camera. As a director, that's what you're obligated to do, is tell great stories. But you got to remember, more than likely, most stories are going to require a team in order for you to execute them. So that balancing act between maintaining your own voice and your uniqueness and your singular voice, combined with the people that are going to help you execute it so that you actually can get it done.
Absolutely. Do we have another question?
She's tethered.
Duck down. There you go.
Hi, my question's for Rubin. How many jobs did you have to work before you could afford your own film company?
It depends on how broke you want to be. I'm so balanced with cynicism and the way to look at life. I'm a firm believer in pursuing your happiness. Like this guy said on Henry Thoreau, he said, confidently go in the direction of your dreams and live the life you've always imagined. I am a firm believer that's what I'm about. So, there are times where you reflect and you're like, should I just take a job for the money? Or should I just take, not even a job, should I just take a project for the money? And you could say yes to it depending on where your heart is at, but I'm in personal pursuit of happiness. And
Yeah, I was just wondering, how long did you have to, work the jobs in order to get the money to do the pursuit of happiness?
all right, I'm a unique individual. I didn't work a job. That's where I'm being sincere, but knowing how absurd that sounds and reminding myself, they got to say this stuff to their parents. And I have a child, so if she tells me she's not going to make a source of income and she's going to rely on me, that's not going to be short. That's not going to be long-lived. So I can't say how long you're going to need to work a job. What I will, amend it by saying is, if you recognize the sacrifice you're willing to make, your time pursuing creating your own source of income, your own business, can be longer and you can outlast other people who are like, I'll give it a year. So the time isn't the thing. It's where's your threshold for pain, you know, and identifying, are you in the place that will allow all of this hard work to pay off? I'm trying to be transparent to make sure you look at where you really want to be. You know, I'm 5'4", so if I told you I wanted to be an NBA basketball player, you'd be like, well, slow down now. You know what I mean? And that's okay, because that's a real assessment of who I am. So you have to identify really where you're at with what your skill sets are, what your passions are, so, and be willing to do some strong self-critiquing to identify if what you think is great is also what the world thinks is great, and would they give you money to do it. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, okay, so you were able to raise money?
Oh, you really want to know, like,
Shit, everything. We have to sit down. That's a separate conversation.
It's like, but there's no magic number. So that's the part that I can't really give you. You know, I can say this. When I moved to Atlanta, I was 23. I was one semester out of Oshkosh. Literally I had one semester left in Oshkosh. And the first project I did was $250. The first feature film I did less than 6 months later was $25,000 budget. Think about it. I'm 23 years old. I get a $25,000 budget to do a music video. I was okay with that. You know, now at this stage that I'm at now, I'm like, that's nothing. But coming from ramen noodles, living in the dorm, Fletcher, 223, all of that stuff, it's like, wow, I'm getting paid to do what I want to do. I have no problems just accepting this number and figuring out how to make it fit into the equation of life. So there is no magic number. I went from $250 to $25,000 based off of me identifying if I stay in Wisconsin, I might not be able to get to this next level, so I got to take this leap of faith and go do this next level. There is no number, and I'm sad that I can't give her a number. I apologize.
No, I'm sorry for asking the question.
No, it's a great question, but the takeaway is just remember, you really have to identify what you're willing to sacrifice and be willing to do, and you know, I'm all about happiness, so you know, I wasn't chasing the money.
Absolutely. What is the most exciting or rewarding aspect of your current job, Eric?
Well, I think the mental challenge of trying to create fresh content, you know, for every time you put out a project, to make it exciting for your audience and to really challenge yourself. For me, it's like, you know, how do I get these guys who don't necessarily want to, and girls who don't want to necessarily give me information? Mm-hmm. How do I get them to talk about this? How do I, as Rubin would say, how do I tell the story of what these people are doing? So I think that trying to keep it fresh for me, exciting for the audience, and then actually just enjoying the interaction of these people, getting to talk to them every week is awesome.
Great. Brenda, what advice would you give to students nearing graduation about how to transition from being a media student to a media professional? How did you do it?
Well, I was already working professionally as a student, so that was definitely helpful. I know my last semester, I just started blanketing, you know, TV stations in the area, and would call them, would send them my resume, would try and get a name of somebody, and just was very persistent.
Absolutely. Rubin, what is the best way to start your career?
As soon as possible. I sincerely believe that.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. Eric, what career obstacles have you had to overcome?
Well, I mean, budget's always a challenge for me, and what I do for the two companies I essentially work for, media is not near at the top of their list, so I have to kind of fight, you know, tooth and nail to get what I can. So I think and you know, keeping up with the technology goes hand in hand with that too. So I think and I'll say this too, like when you're making media, like there's no level playing field. Everybody's just out there, you know. So if I have to compete for the same ears that, you know, Matthew Berry at ESPN is, then so be it. I don't have a choice in the matter. So it's just, you got to find ways around that, fulfill that niche, and just make sure that you get that message heard creatively. However you get that done, you got to get it done.
That's a great way to look at that too. Brenda, once you've landed the job, what do you do next? How do you stand out and move up and find new challenges?
Again, just get your foot in the door any way you can. And just meet people, say hello. We're from Wisconsin, we're friendly. You know how to say hello, ask how you doing, did you see the game? Did you, make connections. That's what we keep saying, and that's truly what it is about. And once you've made that connection, you start asking other questions. And when there's an opportunity, they know who you are, and they'll think about you. But don't just sit there and do a good job. You'll be sitting there doing a good job for the next 20 years. You have to get out, you have to talk to people, you have to connect. So start connecting with the person next to you, because that's what you're going to have to do.
Perfect. Okay. So, Brenda, you offer a scholarship to the young ladies here at UWO who are passionate about storytelling. Could you elaborate on why this is so important to you and offer any encouraging tips you may have to women entering our industry?
Well, I think women are still very underrepresented, and that's why I did do it for women and women storytellers, because especially both in screenwriting and directing, we're still way too underrepresented. And so as that's my passion, I wanted to at least help women rise to that occasion, give them an opportunity. I can tell you nothing's a better feeling than when you create characters from scratch and you find the perfect actor to deliver those words and create that character with you, and you see it come to life. It's the most fulfilling thing that I ever get to do, and I love it. It's just the best feeling in the world, and so I want to support people who want to do that, and any one of you can do whatever you want to do. It's just keep doing it. If I find writing your way in is the way to do it for what I wanted to pursue. Write. Do some more writing, write another one, hone your craft. That's what you need to do.
Absolutely. Rubin, as a media activist and scholar, in your opinion, how has the media's impact on society shifted from when you joined the industry to today?
We get a lot of access to information very quickly. That's new. That's not necessarily a good thing. There's very few filters in place. So you have to even be more media literate now more than ever. It's kind of like healthy eating. What you consume mentally has an impact on you, but it's all available to you now. There used to be like ratings that actually mattered and prevented you from going through that door to see that type of movie. Now you can get any bit of information. So, what I've observed is just it's now more relevant now than ever that you think about what you create and be cognizant of what you're putting out there into the universe, but also realize that what you're experiencing does help shape you. So, not to sound too political or preachy about it, it's kind of like you are what you eat, you are what you consume. So think about what you're consuming.
Absolutely. Eric, over the years you have experienced the vast majority of what RTF has to offer in terms of jobs. Are you grateful for branching out into different parts of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, having this wide breadth of experience is so important, and if you can be not only experienced in all those, but strong and be able to do a good job in radio, TV, behind the camera, in front of the camera, production, behind the mic, the more you can do, the more attractive you are going to be to potential employers. And then when you get that experience, then you can do what Rubin did and go off and do whatever you want, and you answer to yourself. And I think that's what a lot of us would like to do ultimately.
Absolutely. Is there anything you wish you would have done differently, though?
Yeah. I mean, there's, the thing is, and I came to school here. I wasn't, a 20-year-old kid, or a 22-year-old kid when I graduated. I was almost 30. In fact, I think I was actually older than 30 when I graduated. But I wish that I would have made better decisions based on not the present, which I think I've made a lot of decisions based on what can I accomplish now. But if I would have made those decisions, what's best for my future, what's going to set me up for not necessarily success, but happiness, which is what we're all after, I think that things would have turned out differently. I'm happy where I am, but yeah, I mean, the more experience you can get, the better.
Absolutely. We're going to take a few more questions from our audience, so we'll go ahead into our first question now.
Hi there.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. And more than likely, I'll be ending up in Hollywood once I graduate. And I've heard so much about it. I just wanted to get a perspective on people who have been there. Is it easy to get distracted there? Is it stressful? Is it fun? Is it too big? Just give it to me.
The biggest challenge I had was affording to live there because it's ridiculously expensive. And sure, you can get caught up into anything you want because it's there. So, you know, I would recommend being focused, having a game plan, you know, in place before you go. I'm guessing you probably have some friends that are out there that might be able to help you out.
A few people.
And, you know, do you know what it is that you want to pursue at this point?
Yeah, I want to be a writer, director, potential actor. We'll
Okay.
see.
So are you doing all those things?
Yeah.
now? Okay. Well, that's great because, I mean, if you want to be a writer, you need to have samples. You know, we want to see scripts. You know, that's what you need to be doing. Acting, you need to be acting. You know, those are all big things to do, but there's no reason you can't be doing them. But any way in, any connections you can make. There's so many great organizations to get involved with, which I wish I would have done earlier on when I first moved out there. You know, there's writing groups, there's acting groups, there's, you know, you can find them on the internet, you know, and go to these groups that are doing productions and make connections, you know. So there's a lot of things you can do.
Thank you.
Do we have another question? I want another question, guys.
Can I add to your Hollywood aspirations?
Yeah.
Hollywood is expensive. It's where the industry is, though. Trying to survive in Hollywood, it depends on back to how you want to be perceived in Hollywood. I lived in Hollywood over a decade. I lived in Los Angeles over a decade. I lived in North Hollywood, as a matter of fact, which is a great example of if you choose to live where everybody's looking at you, it's a financial different experience than if you live where nobody cares about, which is North Hollywood. And that's strategic, but ironic, you'll discover how many other people live there with you, and you'll be like, oh, not everybody's trying to look like a certain thing. Some people are here to actually do projects or, you know, to do their career. So, you know, it's not about going to Hollywood to go ooh and ah. It's truly about staying focused. I mean, that is really the case. 85% of 85% of what I do is film related. In other words, I have no social life. I'm a big square. I'm not trying to enjoy. I went to one Laker game while I was there, you know, like in 10 years. You know, that's not my interest. My interest is how can I connect this to a film project. So, you know.
That's the way to think.
Hello.
This question is for Brenda, and since you're in charge of distributing ABC dramas, is it difficult for when people pitch shows based in the drama category, is it difficult to choose which ones gets released and which ones gets, you know, pulled back behind the curtains or?
Well, that isn't my job. I write and produce the promos and trailers, but I know about what you're talking. We have ABC Studios, which is where, you know, as a network, we buy from ABC Studios, we buy from Warner Brothers. It's not, we try and do ABC Studio shows because in the back end, the money makes better sense. But I know at ABC Studios, I believe they take 800 pitches a year, and that's for scripted, you know, shows. That's not our reality and specials and things like that. Out of those 800, I believe 50 get ordered to development, you know, script form. And from that, I think we make about 30, you know, into pilots. And from that, depending on what our schedule needs are, maybe 5 dramas, maybe 5 comedies get picked up And to get those pitch meetings, you need representation. So you need to have writing samples. You need to find an agent or a manager, or connect to people that get those meetings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Out of 800, that's insane.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. That's what I heard.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys watch Once Upon a Time, but those two guys, Adam and Eddie, they went to Madison. I mean, everyone. Christopher, he did Beavis and Butthead, right? He went to Oshkosh. Everyone's doing it. I mean, there's opportunity. You can do it.
There's a high level of success out of Oshkosh.
There really is.
And if you go to Hollywood and you choose the network, you'll discover a lot of people from Wisconsin or Wisconsin ties. It's really weird. Like, I was at Sundance and somebody overheard me speaking about Wisconsin. Oh, I go to Wisconsin all the time. And I'm like, and this is in Utah, and she's like, yeah. And she started name dropping spots. I'm like, wow, you really actually are from Wisconsin. And so don't be surprised when you run across Wisconsin people. That shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah,
it's what you do with the relationships and, where you're trying to position yourself.
Do you have another question?
Hi, I'm Christine. Just for you guys, like in your personal lives, you guys have all different jobs, but do you guys do stuff outside of your work that you stay creative with? Like, do you write? Do you listen to podcasts? Like, what do you guys do to stay creative outside of your jobs?
Well, for me, I have to. I mean, just to know what other people, other peers, are doing. I want to be in on that, and I'm not ashamed to, try to take something that they're doing well and copy it. I mean, not explicitly, but copy the format and try to take, because I think we're all learning from each other. Once you get in the industry, you don't have professors telling you, okay, this is what you should be doing, this is what you should be doing. You kind of got to think on your feet and learn from the people that you're working with, and that's what makes really good content.
Absolutely.
I'm in classes and workshops all the time. I'm continually writing. I'm working on a novel right now, screenplays. I'm always working on my own stuff outside of my day job.
Latin phrase, "Owen apprendo," always learn, keep learning. There's no denying that. I came back from Cuba this summer, took a documentary film class at the International School of Cinema and Television. Why? Because I wanted to learn how to make better documentaries. Why would I do it in the United States when I could go to Cuba and do it? Yes. So to me, you're obligated to always stay current, technologically speaking, stay current with what the trends are, what people's sensibilities are. But that makes it seem like there's nothing else, which is kind of true with me. Like, everything is film related. I love cooking, but it makes me think of cooking shows. I love traveling, more shows. You know what I mean? So for me, that's always interwoven, with the exception of the one thing that I am very adamant about. What I love is I'm a dad. So, being a father to my daughter, that's not the hobby, but that's what I do when I am not making films. I'm like, hey. But yeah, that kind of translates to film too. She's turning into a story, so yeah, So.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I'd like to thank the talented members of the panel, Rubin, Brenda, and Eric, for joining us today and sharing their knowledge and insights about the media industry. You've certainly given us a lot to think about as we continue to plan for our careers. I'd like to also thank the RTF professors and students who contributed to the production of this year's Pro Perspectives panel. Finally, thank you for joining us live on 90.3 WRST FM Oshkosh and Titan TV, channel 9757, and our HD channel 71.1. I'm Garahbrie Wesley-James, and this has been the 9th Annual Radio TV Film Pro Perspectives panel at UW Oshkosh. We'll see you again next year.
So nice to meet you.
Likewise.